Good evening, everyone. I'm Mayor Kate Kendall, and thank you for joining us tonight's meeting. And shout out to Youth Councillor joining in person and any Youth Councillors online tonight as well. And welcome to the gallery. As per the governance rules, those addressing Council are to be courteous and respectful to Councillors, Council staff and any other members of the public gallery. If a member of the public is disrupting the conduct of the meeting, as Mayor, I may seek their removal from the meeting. And before we begin, I'd also like to welcome our brand new Director of Corporate, Lisa Knight. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. It's great to have you. Macedon Ranges Shire Council acknowledges the Dja Dja Wurrung, Tongarong and Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung peoples as the traditional owners and custodians of this land and waterways. Council recognises their living cultures and ongoing connection to country and pays respect to their elders past, present and emerging. Council also acknowledges local Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander residents of Macedon Ranges for their ongoing contribution to the diverse culture of our community. Noonan. This meeting is being recorded and streamed live on the internet in accordance with Council's live streaming and publishing of Council's meeting policy, which can be viewed on Council's website. The recording will be available on Council's website within 48 hours. CEO, do we have any apologies this evening?
Good evening. There are no apologies. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. We'll now move on to declarations of conflict of interest. And do any councillors or council staff have a conflict of interest on any matter on the agenda tonight? Director PE.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a conflict of interest for item PE1. There's a general conflict with potential family members interested. Thank you.
Thank you, Director PE. Does anyone else have any conflicts of interest? No, we'll move on to the next section, section 6 of the agenda, and that is petitions. And the first item and only item in this section is 6.1, petition in relation to the speed limit and unsafe intersections on Graham's Road, Lancefield. And I'll be looking for a motion, and there is an officer recommendation on page 5. Councillor Scanlon.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to move the officer recommendation on page 5. The council notes the petition from Dennis Graham on the matter of speed limit and unsafe intersection on Graham's Road, Lancefield, with 27 signatories. Notes that the petition has been circulated to all councillors confidentially as it contains personal information. And 3, requests the Chief Executive Officer to prepare a report in response to this petition to be presented to the September 2026 meeting of Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Borthwick.
Happy to second the motion as it reads on page 5. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any opposition? Seeing no opposition, the motion is carried. Would anyone like to speak to the resolution? Councillor Scanlon.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to thank all the petitioners for putting this petition together for Graham's racetrack. I mean Graham's Road.
Sounds better.
A lot of effort's been put there, so that's a great thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Councillor Borthwick.
Thanks, Mayor. Just briefly, just to thank and echo the sentiments of Councillor Scanlon, but also just to note that residents are often our eyes and ears on the ground. So when people take the time to advocate for improvements, it creates a real opportunity for Council to review, investigate and where possible make local transport networks safer for everyone. So I really wanted to step up and thank you guys for putting this together and for being here tonight.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? I might say just a quick thank you as well. Thanks, Governance. Thank you to Dennis Graham for putting the petition in, and look back through the emails and could see first reached out in December last year. So it's been quite a while that this issue's been going on. It's not a densely populated area, so to see 27 people contribute to the petition, I think is a great result. And I think submitting petitions is a great first step to advocate for speed reductions. So it's great to put it through a structured council process. And the report will be coming back in September. So looking forward to what the motion will be. So thanks once again. Would anyone else like to say some words? If not, I might give the gallery a moment if they would like to vacate, or you're welcome to stay. So, yes. No, yeah, no worries. Okay, thank you. We'll keep moving. We're going to go to the next item, which We've now got deputations and presentations to council. If we could please make room, thank you, because we'll be hearing from Vanitha Pinto, who's the chair of our Audit and Risk Committee, and she'll be presenting a summary of the Audit and Risk Committee's biannual report. Welcome, Vinny, and over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Kendall, and thank you to the Council for the opportunity to present the first biannual report of the Audit and Risk Committee for 2026. This report forms part of the Council's governance obligations under the Local Government Act 2020. It outlines the committee's activities and findings over the last 6 months of the year, and this has been included in the paper for tonight's meeting. The committee met twice this year on the 11th of March and 10th of June to carry out its responsibilities under the Act and the Council's Charter. Independent membership remain unchanged, with myself as the chair, Maggie Williams, Jonathan Quivalidis, and David Gunn. Councillor delegates joining the committee during the first 6 months of 2026 were Councillor Alison Joseph and Councillor Cassie Borthwick, with Councillor Jennifer Anderson, the first substitute delegate, and Councillor Daniel Young as the second substitute delegate. I thank all the councillor representatives for their contributions, and I also acknowledge the councillors who regularly attend these meetings as observers. Turning to the committee's key works, we had 4 internal audit reports presented, and they covered a range of topics. First being the NIST cybersecurity framework, a review of integration and embedding of risk processes into councils, risk practices into council processes, a review of the privacy management, including risks associated with the use of artificial intelligence, a review of the budget management. The committee was pleased to be able to review the reports, ask questions of both the internal auditor and the management during the March and the June meetings, and about the actions identified and the timelines to progress them. The committee also reviewed the strategic internal audit plan for 2026-27 and monitored progress on the remaining 2 audits of 2025-2026, being the review of the procure to pay progress, which includes a review of accounts payable and credit cards, and the review of the Council's project management framework. VAGO, Victorian Auditor General's Office, presented their draft audit strategy for the financial year ending 30th of June at our March meeting, and also details relating to the audit of the performance statement. At our June meeting, VAGO presented the draft findings of the interim financial audit in preparation for the final audit commencing in August. During the meeting, results of the report of the local government audits were discussed. The Council's interim financial audit findings aligned with the recommendations from this report, which is to undertake a review of our capital expenditure budgeting process to understand areas of underspending. The committee has continued to receive updates from VAGO on their broader work program, including the financial audit planning and the sector-wide performance audits, along with regular updates from IBAC and other governance reviews across local governments for us to learn and share best practices. The committee was also briefed on the Council's finances, the draft Council budget for 2026, digital technology matters, fraud controls, cybersecurity controls, reimbursement of expenditure for the councillors and delegates, and councillors' ongoing work to consolidate and track the various strategies, policies, plans, and compliance reporting. The committee also received the very first report analysing complaints for insights and trends. Additionally, at each meeting, we get regular CEO updates on emerging risks and strategic developments. The committee also receives high-risk weather updates and preparedness report, particularly given our location and covering both the storm and wet weather season and also for the fire season. The committee also reviewed and provided feedback on 2 council policies, compliance and enforcement policy and the occupational health and safety policy. The committee received an update on progress towards the Year 1 actions for shaping the ranges 2025 to 2035. Lastly, the council were provided with summary of changes to the local government performance reporting framework and the local government model financial report relevant for the 2025-26 financial year. The first half of 2026 has seen continued engagement from both the officers and committee members. The committee remains effective and committed to providing council with strong oversight and well-considered, thoughtful recommendations. With those comments, as the chair of the Audit and Risk Committee, I'm pleased to present this report to the council. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vinnie. We really appreciate that. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you.
We haven't received any other public questions for this meeting, so we're going to go to the next section of the agenda, and that is 8, adoption of minutes. And I'll be looking for a motion as a recommendation on page 6. Councillor Guthrie.
Happy to move the recommendation that Council confirms the minutes of the scheduled Council meeting of Macedon Ranges Shire Council held on 17th of June 2026 as circulated.
Thank you, Councillor Guthrie. Councillor Scanlon.
Happy to second that motion, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Scanlon. Is there any opposition? No, seeing no opposition, the motion is carried. We'll now move on to the next section, which is section 9, the Mayor's report. And I'll just take a moment to run through some things. So the report's also in the agenda that you can read in full, but over the past months it's been a wonderful time to connect with many members of our community, local businesses, volunteers and community groups. And we also went to the National General Assembly, CEO and I, and there's a report later in that report. So that was an opportunity to advocate at the federal stage, especially with the Australian Council of Local Government, and also had a meeting around the Local Government Mayoral Advisory Panel where there was an opportunity to also advocate then at the state level for the Minister for Government, Local Government. It was also changeover season with a lot of our service clubs, so it was great to get across Lions clubs, Rotary clubs, and congratulations to all the new teams and presidents there. And lovely opening from Daniel Butterworth Landscapes at Campaspe Mill Gallery. The Economic Development team have been working closely with that venue. Also went out to the Shire of Gisborne, the Gisborne and Mount Macedon Districts Historical Society. It was great to see some items there and just hear a little bit from their volunteers. And further, just community group meetups, Macedon Rangers and District Motor Car Club, July's Cars and Chatters was great. And finally, then also continued community engagement through further Meet the Mayor sessions, and anyone who wants to look for community consultations can go to Council's Have Your Say. And then yesterday, councillors attended the Live for Life Youth Mental Health Stakeholder Forum, which reinforced the importance of continuing to support positive mental health outcomes for our young people. So this is the last Mayor's meeting, my Mayor's report for this term. So thank you, councillors, thank you, council staff, and it's been a great term, and looking forward to the next few weeks. And we'll have more on the next steps about mayoral transition shortly. So, councillors, thank you for your time. I'll be looking for a motion, and there's a recommendation on page 7 of the agenda. Councillor Guthrie.
Thank you, Mayor Kendall. The recommendation is that Council receives and notes the Mayor's report.
Thank you, Councillor Guthrie. Councillor Pearce.
I second it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any opposition? Seeing no opposition, the motion is carried. Thank you. We'll now move on to section 10 of the agenda. And the only item in this section is item 10.1, record of meetings of councillors and council staff. And there's an officer recommendation on page 10 of the agenda. I'll be looking for a motion. Councillor Guthrie.
Thank you, Mayor Kendall. The recommendation is that Council receives and notes the record of meetings of councillors and council staff as outlined in this report.
Thank you, Councillor Guthrie. Councillor Anderson.
Happy to second Councillor Guthrie's motion.
Thank you. Is there any opposition? Seeing no opposition, the motion is carried. We'll now move on to section 11 of the agenda, Planning and Environment Reports. And the first item in this section is PE1 PLN 2025-354, 16 Jeffrey Street, Woodend. And I'll now give Director P&E a moment to leave the chamber. Thank you. The Director of planning environments now out of the chamber, and councillors, I'll be looking for a motion, and there's an officer recommendation on page 17. Councillor Pearce.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll move the officer recommendation on page 17.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Biannual.
Happy to second.
Thank you. Is there any opposition? Seeing no opposition, the motion is carried. Would anyone like to speak to the resolution? Councillor Anderson.
Yes, just briefly, we did have, the reason this has come to a council meeting is the number of objectors, and we have in our guidelines that if there are more than 4 objectors, that it will come to a council meeting for decision, which I think is a good thing. It lets the community see the report and what the planners have gone through. This has been a difficult one for me because previously Wood End had some really great neighbourhood character overlays in it that our community and our councils of the day worked really hard to protect heritage and the neighbourhood and what was there. But unfortunately, with the changes with the state government and the way that they've enforced a top-down approach of the planning scheme, a lot of that has been lost. And so now things like setbacks and open space, tree canopies, some of this, unfortunately, the community has no grounds to take it to VCAT and have a third-party appeal rights. So it means that some of these decisions where we might have been able to subtly work with an applicant and do things slightly differently, they comply and tick a box already as per the state government Victorian planning provisions, which we don't have other provisions to override at this stage. So we will be undergoing a review of the planning scheme, and I would encourage the community to have a look at that and say, what is important to me? What do I think is no longer there that used to protect my community? This applicant has provided something that is acceptable within the planning scheme, and so I know not everybody likes everything that happens. There is a tree being lost, but it isn't a specific wonderful native tree, it is a petostrum. So I think that the staff have really looked at this in its fullness, and so we have listened to the objectors, but unfortunately it does comply with the planning scheme, and so it is one of those ones that should we have said no to it, the grounds just wouldn't have been there in the planning scheme as it is today, and a lot of those aspects of the planning scheme have come about from state government changes that perhaps had we had the previous planning scheme, we may have been able to modify things and had a different outcome. But I still think this is a good outcome. The housing is being provided close to town, which is what we like to see, rather than things in a more remote location. And I'm sure once the design is there and these new people are welcomed into that community, they will forget about the fact that there was something different there before. I think sometimes change can be a little bit difficult, but for me, it does comply with the planning scheme, and it is housing that we do need, a variety of housing, and it is close to town, but mainly it complies with the planning scheme as is. So there was really no grounds for us to be refusing it. But really, thank you to the applicant and thank you to the submitters and the objectors for letting us know your thoughts, and for the staff for taking that into consideration.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Pearce.
Yes, thank you. Agree with Councillor Anderson. This was the trigger for this report to council was greater than 5 objections. Wanted to take on board the meeting with the objectors and the applicant. I think was very productive, and we did reinforce that we did hear from the objectors. There was their concerns over the heritage they felt should be applied in this area, but there needs to be further strategic work done if that was to occur, and it's not currently in place, any heritage overlay. So we have, though, that has been fed back to councillors and officers. As Councillor Anderson says, we are supporting greater housing diversity, and it's consistent with the strategic direction. The location in this zone, in this area, is identified as suitable for multi-dwellings. All of the clauses, the officer's report is very detailed. The engineering department and the open space department will be adding permit conditions around it as well. It's got cultural heritage management plan. It's consistent with the statement of planning policy. So I know that there will be some disappointment, but I think the question was asked with officers about, when objectors or when people request what they feel would be better outcomes, that the actual officer's role is not to identify or redesign a proposal to achieve what others or other people may consider to be more of an ideal outcome. It's actually that they have to assess and determine whether the proposal that is submitted is acceptable outcome related to the relevant provisions and decision guidelines in the planning scheme itself. So take on board, thanks to all the people that came to the meeting and that shared their thoughts, as you said, and thank you to the officers for such a detailed assessment and recommendation.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to? Councillor Guthrie.
Thank you, Mayor Kendall. I'd like to agree with what Councillor Anderson has said. I think this is an example of where we're being destroyed, unfortunately, by the state government. We had some excellent controls in the neighbourhood residential zone previously with setbacks and things, and we could look at neighbourhood character. But the approach now is top-down, city-centric, and anything goes almost. And when we went to the applicant objectives meeting, one of the objectives said he was happy with 2 dwellings on the site, but the planning consultant for the applicant said 3 is a lot less than what we could have put on that site. And that's a scary thing. We've had that on a couple of applications recently where we've been told, accept this because it's a lot less than what you could get. So I find that frustrating, but unfortunately they're the rules we have to abide by, and our staff, all they can do is comply with what is in the planning scheme as determined from time to time by the state government.
Thank you, Councillor Guthrie. Would anyone else like to speak? If not, we'll invite Director P&E back into the chamber, please. Thank you, CEO. Welcome back. Thank you. We'll now move to the next item in this section, which is PE2, Amendment C16, MACRA, Clarkefield Township Development Submission, and we'll be having an introduction from our developer Director P&E. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. The Minister for Planning is currently considering a combined planning scheme amendment and planning permit application which proposes to accommodate 6,000 people on 175 hectares of land east of the existing Clarkefield railway station. The amendment would allow for potential development of 2,500 new homes, an activity centre, a potential new primary school, a community centre, open space, a community farm and a solar farm. Council officers have made an initial submission into the process, and the submission before you tonight is for Council's endorsement as Council's second submission. So it doesn't replace the officer's submission, it, I guess, augments it and provides more detail. The submission before you tonight says there are significant strategic infrastructure, governance, environmental, social and implementation issues with the proposal that are unresolved, and therefore, either need to be resolved or the Minister shouldn't be supporting the proposal in front of her. At our level, Clarkefield is currently identified as, Clarkefield is not currently identified as a preferred location for growth, and planning policy does not anticipate change with respect to Clarkefield's role in the short term. So our settlement strategy and the Macedon Ranges Statement of Planning Policy identified the need to resolve the long-term role of Clarkefield and its, in terms of its role within the broader settlement hierarchy across the Shire, and how and when Clarkefield should change. And this proposal doesn't do that. Clarkefield has, Council has planned for growth across the Shire and will accommodate well-planned growth in towns identified through Council settlement strategy, and that's not Clarkefield. The submission also speaks to the absence of any comprehensive social and economic impact assessment. While the proposal is supported by documents that identify future demand for community facilities and services, those documents do not assess the broader social consequences and implications of creating a brand new township of approximately 6,000 plus residents in a location that is presently a small hamlet. There is no assessment of whether the proposal will generate positive or negative net social or economic outcomes, nor any evaluation of the social costs and benefits of directing growth to Clarkefield as compared to other locations within our municipality. There are many other concerns in the proposal as set out in the submission, and we are recommending that Council endorse the second written submission to the amendment and lodge this with the Minister for Planning for her consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Director P&E. And councillors, there's an officer recommendation on page 65 of the agenda, and I'll be looking for a motion. Councillor Young.
I'll move the motion on page 65.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Scanlon.
I'm happy to second that motion. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Scanlon. Is there any opposition? Seeing no opposition, the motion is carried. Would anyone like to speak to the resolution? Councillor Young.
Thank you, Mayor. We've discussed this matter a number of times already in the chamber. I feel like every month we have another chapter in the saga that is the Clarkefield Township development. And so at this stage, we've probably said all we need to say, and we're reiterating. But I do want to thank the staff for their work on this. This has been something that has been forced upon us, and we've just had to, I guess, drop everything else that we're doing and put all of our resources into the whim of the government because they've got a problem and they expect us to solve it. The issues that we have from a council perspective are laid out pretty well in this submission, and yeah, we don't need to go over them again, but I think the key takeaway here is that we're working backwards. We're coming from a place where there is going to be a decision made by the government because of a need that they have, and now we need to change the whole scope and way in which we manage investigation into these kind of things to suit it. And it doesn't fit in with other works that we've got going on. It doesn't fit in with the way in which we want our Shire to operate and manage, and the way in which our small country towns already are seeking their own works being done. It's just thrown everything into chaos. So the staff are doing a great job. There's probably a lot of pressure from the council group on them to do a really good job in this space because the council group's fairly united on pushing back on this one, and they're really stepping up to the task with this one. So I just want to thank them and just reiterate as a further message to the government that you cannot just change the character of the Macedon Ranges because you've got a housing crisis problem and make it our problem in that process. We don't want to be Melbourne, we don't want urban sprawl, we don't want to be encroached on. We just want to be left alone and to develop normally, naturally, like we have for the last however many years. So, yeah, hands off. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. Totally agree with everything that Councillor Young has said. It's been a lot of work for our staff because there were a lot of documents to read and they weren't well formulated and they contradicted themselves and they weren't very evidence-based. So we are not a growth zone. We are not one of the Meltons, the Cardinias, the Caseys, even the Humes. We're not a growth zone. We are a distinctive area in landscape. We have a statement of planning policy. The staff put in an awful lot of work, and it was before my time, and Councillor Guthrie was on council at the time that started the settlement strategy. It was endorsed in my term of council. It had a huge amount of community input. Not everybody agreed with everything, but we came up with a really good settlement hierarchy that, as our Director of Planning Environment has said, had Clarkefield sitting as a hamlet and said, look, we'll define the role of Clarkefield later when that statement of planning policy that was a state government directive came out. They said, let's define it later. So there's a lot about this that seems to contradict what the state government has previously said, including their policy about where to put housing. They're 60-40 or was it 70-30, I never remember, but it's basically you should put housing close to where there is already infrastructure and not be doing greenfield and urban sprawl, as Councillor Young said, which is exactly what Clarkefield is about. It hasn't got that community infrastructure. It hasn't got the water, the wastewater, the school, the ovals. It hasn't got the facilities for 6,000 people, which is 10 times what it is expected to have currently in our settlement strategy. You as a community put effort into our settlement strategy and our planning scheme, and really we should be reviewing, have we got the settlement strategy right? Have we got the areas where we're thinking we can accommodate growth right? Because at the moment, they're closer to the centres of towns that already exist. There already are roads, there is a train, there is infrastructure. I know there's a train at Clarkefield, but as Councillor Joseph has numerously pointed out, it is a short platform. It can only take 3 carriages, so it is going to be a real challenge. So it was really good that the staff were able to put in the original submission by the due date, given that we weren't allowed an extension, and allowed us as councillors to provide some input. But it's very complicated, these documents, and at a minimum, this should be going to some sort of independent panel for the Planning Minister to decide this without, a high level of scrutiny. We need to make decisions as a council with our community, and to have one person making a decision on documents that have come from a developer that are poorly formulated is just not right. So thanks to everyone who's put input. Thanks to the community for hosting us and telling us about their thoughts, about what they thought would be a good idea. And we've learnt so much more about the community there, and I'm really grateful for everyone who's provided support for us to put this subsequent submission together. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak? Might say a few quick words. Thank you. Obviously, a lot's been covered, but I really did want to say thank you to the staff for it was a detailed process. I think it's the submission itself has a lot of the concerns in there and is very well spelled out. And as Councillor Anderson just said, the takeaway from the submission is that we'd like it to go to an independent planning panel or advisory committee process. So I think it was just good to cherry pick that ask from there. And just say that, yes, a lot of the submission talked about concerns about infrastructure scaling with growth. And then furthermore, just some of the issues that were raised when the developer had a webinar about things like the single car household, and there were suggestions to change diet to reduce less emissions and things like that. But then when you look in the report, there is a bit of scrutiny about environmental sustainability and actually making sure that it is really authentic. So I think that's important to note, that when we talk about green initiatives, that they actually make a difference. And for me, this is not about opposition to a thriving community being developed in Clarkefield. I just think it has to be done properly and with the community voice at the heart of it. And I think these submissions are a really great way to do that. So thanks again to council staff. Thank you. Anyone else like to say any words? Councillor Borthwick.
Just quickly, and I think so much has been said tonight, so there's no need for me to go over anything that has been said. But I think that the only thing I would say is further to Councillor Anderson's commentary about 10 times the growth. I did some sums today, and on the most recent census data, there's 301 residents in Clarkefield, and the proposal will yield 6,000 people. That's an uplift of 1,880%. So I'd just like for the community to let that sink in. That's quite extraordinary. A massive shout out to the community that showed up. It's a little ferocious community that showed up and put forward those submissions, and I don't think that the power of their words, their submissions, their influence, their pleas should be underestimated. And to echo the sentiment of Mayor Kendall, at the absolute minimum, I would hope that this proposal is tested through an independent planning panel process at the absolute minimum. I think the community and the council deserves that at the very least. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Borthwick. Would anyone else like to say any words? Thank you. We'll keep moving. We'll go to the next item in this section, which is PE.3 Response to Petition formally seeking exclusion from the Victorian Kangaroo Harvest Management Plan, and we'll be having an introduction from our Director Planning Environment.
Thank you, Mayor. This report responds to a petition received that had 100 signatories petitioning Council to seek exclusion from the State Government of Victoria's Kangaroo Harvesting Management Plan shooting zone. Kangaroo control in Victoria is managed entirely by the State Government through the Authority to Control Wildlife process and through its 2024 to 28 kangaroo harvesting program. The Kangaroo Harvest Management Plan enables the authorisation of commercial kangaroo harvesting in Victoria and sets out the aims, standards and rules for doing so. So harvesting must be ecologically sustainable, humane and only undertaken by authorised harvesters. And the program itself is highly regulated. The management of kangaroos is a sensitive topic that is of great concern to members of the Macedon Ranges community, both for and against commercial harvesting. Council does not have municipal level data to inform a submission on animal numbers and quotas or harvest numbers in the Shire. Nor does Council have data on animal welfare during harvesting or the humane treatment of animals as they are harvested on which to inform or base a submission. Consequently, it is recommended that Council does not formally seek exclusion of the Macedon Ranges Shire from the kangaroo harvesting program, and that we encourage community to provide feedback directly to the state government during its, its stakeholder engagement processes when it reviews the plan, before 2028. Thank you.
Thank you, Director, Planning and Environment. I'll be looking for a motion. Thank you, Councillor Joseph.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to put an alternative motion to the officer recommendation that Council does formally seek exclusion of the Macedon Ranges Shire Council from the kangaroo harvesting program, encourages the community to provide feedback directly to state government during public consultations, stakeholder engagement review of the plan, which will occur at least 12 months prior to the expiry on 31st December 2028, and notifies the lead petition of Council's decision. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Joseph. Is there a seconder?
I'm happy to second.
Is there any opposition? Thank you. Seeing opposition, we'll go to debate. And Councillor Joseph, over to you.
Thank you very much. I was originally okay with the officer recommendation, but I then did some reading and I've changed my mind. Look, I have no objection to farmers culling kangaroos if they're a threat to their livelihood. I also have absolutely no opposition if these culled kangaroos are used for human or pet consumption. But it's my understanding that farmers are able to obtain authorisation to kill kangaroos that sits outside the harvesting program and the quota via that authorisation to control wildlife. What I failed to appreciate until recently is that harvesting is something completely different to necessary culling. Harvesting is an industry, and I'm concerned by the creation of an industry that becomes dependent on the continual slaughter of kangaroos. There have also been numerous welfare concerns raised in relation to the current harvesting practice. This includes increases in kangaroos presenting with gunshot injuries and concerns with the way in which in-pouch joeys are killed. There are also concerns about the unreliability of the population data on which the quotas are based. The harvesting is not restricted to farming areas and does not preclude the killing of kangaroos in conservation zones or wildlife corridors. I would also like to suggest that kangaroos and other wildlife are possibly our area's greatest tourism asset, should be valued as such. Where else this close to Melbourne can tourists see so much wildlife in their natural surroundings? Another major concern I have with the harvesting is the unknown effects of kangaroo killing on the social fabric of kangaroo mobs and on their genetic diversity. Recent research has identified that eastern grey kangaroos form long-term relationships and suggests that social cohesion in kangaroo groups has been underestimated. I therefore believe we do not have enough information to accurately predict the long-term effects of harvesting. New viruses reaching our shores may also have serious effects on kangaroo populations, which makes genetic diversity critical. Australia has a total quota of roughly 6 million kangaroos per year, with average kills of 1 to 2 million per year, being the largest commercial slaughter of wildlife anywhere in the world. Approximately 50% of meat, skin and hide is exported, with the EU being a major market, and particularly fashion use of leather derived from kangaroos. Estimates range between 360,000 to 500,000 dependent joeys killed each year as a byproduct of these commercial operations. Harvesting is not selective culling. It is not aimed at solving road strikes or specifically targeted to solve any other problem. Harvesting is about commercial production. It is a blunt instrument as far as other problems are concerned. Harvesting is commercialisation dressed up as a solution to these community problems. It is for the above reasons I oppose kangaroo harvesting and propose that Council seeks to be excluded from the program. I believe this would not prevent farmers from seeking authorisation for culling of kangaroos. I believe the entire harvesting program has to be redesigned based on a scientific assessment of long-term consequences and be better monitored and managed. At the turn of the 20th century, Australia was culling millions of koalas a year to feed the export market for their skins. And I'm not sure we have moved on from that 19th century mindset. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Joseph. Councillor Anderson, would you like to speak or reserve?
I'll reserve, thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone like to speak in opposition of the motion? Councillor Young.
Thank you, Mayor. It's always a really difficult conversation when we talk about killing animals, and people can get very emotive about it. People often conflate facts with emotive stories, and the reality is here that we have a program in place that's there to assist farmers with an issue that they're having, and as a byproduct of that, there is a harvest. The issues around animal welfare that Councillor Joseph has raised, I completely sympathise with. I understand where it's coming from. And there's a lot of work done by organisations in Victoria on making sure that any animals that are killed under an ATCW or through any other ordinary hunting is done safely, humanely, in the best way possible. SSAA, I know, have lots of information and have done some engagement on kangaroo killing specifically through the harvest program and through ATCWs for farmers who are looking to control themselves. This is an issue that's been going on for quite a long time, and kangaroo populations in a lot of areas are much higher because of people and through clearing land, and the populations now are more than basically they ever have been. There used to be provision in place for farmers to cull kangaroos, and the rules originally were that the kangaroos had to be left where they got shot, and they weren't allowed to be used. And as someone who's a hunter myself, I really take offence to that. And if we can have a program or a system in place where any animals that do have to be killed for various reasons can be actually utilised, then I think that's a good thing. It wasn't until about 2016 that ATCW permit shooters were having to leave animals where they were killed, and now those people can actually take those animals and use for personal consumption. The harvest program takes that another step further, where they can be actually used for pet food and other meats. Councillor Joseph talked about the word harvest and what harvesting is, and I guess in a way it could be semantics here, because we're utilising animals that would otherwise be killed, and there are semantics at play with lots of arguments here, because Councillor Joseph went on to use the word slaughter after that. So, we're talking about harvesting on one hand, slaughter the next when we're trying to get a motive and make a point. But I really would encourage people to look at the work done by Arthur Ryler in setting up this program, in putting in quotas in place, and the work done by some of our hunting organisations to ensure that humane action is taken.
Councillor Young, thank you. Would anyone like to speak for the motion? Would anyone like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. If this motion doesn't get up, I foreshadow an alternate that has been circulated with councillors before, which is known to councillors, so I won't put that forward for the community, but I'm foreshadowing a motion that councillors have seen before. I think Councillor Joseph has raised some good points, that the shooting of kangaroos, if they are causing harm on a property or some issues competing with land, etc., farmers do have that permission to be able to shoot them, and they have changed the rules to say that farmers can actually make use of that. They don't have to, just bury it and leave it there, which I think is a really good progression. If you're going to have to shoot something, you may as well be able to use the products of it. But expanding it out to being able to have more people being able to shoot more kangaroos, not just the ones that are causing a problem on a particular farmer's land. We did have a motion before us in another term of council where this came up when this plan was coming about, and it had community consultation and submissions. And we requested from the government for us to have the information and the evidence behind how they were creating these numbers, how it was being formed. Unfortunately, the state government did not respond to that request, and that did make it very difficult for Macedon Rangers to be able to put in a position statement because we didn't have the evidence. And often to get this evidence, it can be probably quite difficult if you don't know what you're working from. So to have that evidence, I think, is really, really important. My understanding is that Macedon Rangers has a much larger number of kangaroos as part of this harvest program than any other region in Victoria. And so that does concern me because I don't know whether we have that many more kangaroos than any other region in Victoria because I haven't been able to get access to that data and that evidence. So I think that we should consider putting forward to the state government that the evidence for us isn't there, that we should be part of this program or have a conversation about modifying it or doing something different. We have heard from our community that it's a concern to them. And if we haven't got the evidence to base this program on, then perhaps we should be writing to the state government and saying, give us that evidence so that we can make a decision as to what's appropriate for our community and we can have that conversation with our communities. So at this point in time, I am supportive of this motion, but foreshadow if this one doesn't get up, my alternate that it has been circulated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Would anyone else like to speak? Councillor Borthwick.
I just seek a point of clarification, if I may, and that's for, I'm not sure if it's for Councillor Young or Councillor Anderson, in terms of is the harvest program required for farmers to shoot kangaroos on their own property? Can that be done?
I might, it's a little bit getting out of the scale of introducing new information and things like that, so I'll just leave it at there. Did you want to speak to the motion, or I'll ask again? Would anyone else like to speak for or against the motion? Sorry, Councillor Biannual.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, always a sensitive topic, and but one thing I guess that I'll add, because I won't repeat a lot of what people have already said, is really the risk to our community around vehicle accidents. And you know, the Macedon Ranges itself has the highest rate of wildlife road strikes in Victoria by a significant margin. So yeah, that wasn't mentioned. So yeah, there are some facts, I guess, out there and figures. So, yeah, that's why I won't be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak for or against the motion? I might say a few words, please, Governance. Thank you. So I think it's a great conversation, but I think it's actually a conversation not for this time, because at the moment the review is, as it says in the report, it's not an active review. So even if we established a new position, it would not be incorporated. You can see in the example that the Yarra Ranges Shire recently in 25 had a unanimous motion, and then it was rejected by the state government. So I think as part of the future review, then that's an opportunity to bring this to briefing. As Councillor Anderson mentioned, this is from 23, there was previous reports, but for new councillors that haven't been involved in that previous review, we haven't had full briefing, we haven't looked at consultation with the community, chatted to different sides, and thank you to the petitioners for triggering this question, but it probably wouldn't have been a question that we kicked off without the petition, so it's a bit of a both and, but I think it's an opportunity to support Councillor Anderson's foreshadowed motion, where we won't be, establishing a new position at this time, but we'll be asking for more evidence and data to look into this when that review timeframe will come about. So have a look at the report, have a look at the findings, but ultimately we need to just kind of wait for now and be part of a structured review, because otherwise we're kind of wasting a time. And even if we work with the community, put up something, the likelihood that it would get up is very minimal. So, thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? we'll go back to Councillor Joseph for right and reply.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank all the councillors for their contributions. Thank you, Councillor Anderson, for your support, and thank you, Councillor Young. Now, I appreciate it's a motive issue, but hopefully you understand that's not where I'm coming from. I don't have any problem with farmers shooting kangaroos for their financial security, to ensure that their farms can operate. I have no problem with the kangaroos that are culled in that way being used for commercial purposes in terms of, for pet meat or whatever. I believe farmers do have access to the authorisation for wildlife destruction, which is another mechanism by which they can do that. I see harvesting as being something completely different. And the reason is it's not targeted. It's not targeted at those particular farming properties. It doesn't have to be a farming property that can call them in. It's not targeted at roadsides, so it's not necessarily going to solve anything about road strikes. It's not aimed to do those things. It's just a very blunt instrument, a flat 14,000 whatever numbers, and it's not targeted to actually achieve any of the other results other than to kill the kangaroos. In terms of welfare, the main concern is around joeys, the destruction of joeys, because when you shoot a female kangaroo, you generally have to kill the joey, and that's most of the welfare concerns. So I've really got no great disagreement. Councillor Banana raised the issue of risk to community from wildlife strikes. I don't believe just targeting kangaroos generally across the area is going to solve that problem, and if you wanted to solve that problem, you could actually investigate ways to do that, and maybe specific culling in specific areas or bringing in specific measures to solve that. My other concern, which I mentioned before, is about maintaining genetic diversity. We don't know anything about the genetic diversity across the whole area.
Thank you, Councillor.
And with viruses, that could be an issue.
Thank you. Now call the item to a vote. All those in favour of the motion, please raise your hand. Thank you. And all those against. Thank you. The motion is lost. Division? No. Sorry. Okay. Thank you. Okay. The motion is lost, and I'll be looking for a new motion. Thank you. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. Sorry, I got ahead of myself there. I'm trying to move things along. I would like to put forward the motion that I did foreshadow before that has been circulated to councillors in advance, and that is that Council 1 does not formally seek exclusion of Macedon Ranges Shire Council from the kangaroo harvesting program at this point in time, whilst the review is not active. 2, request the State Government provide an evidence-based analysis of the Victorian Kangaroo Harvest Management Plan 2024-2028, demonstrating A, how commercial kangaroo harvesting under the program was sustainable and humane, and B, how future proposed kangaroo harvesting numbers, in brackets if any, have been calculated. And then 3, encourages the community to provide feedback directly to the State Government during public consultation, stakeholder engagement and review of the plan, which will occur at least 12 months prior to its expiry on 31st of December 2028. And 4, notifies the lead petitioner of Council's decision, and we'll be looking for a seconder. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Councillor Guthrie?
Happy to second that, Mayor Kendall.
Thank you. Is the opposition? Seeing no opposition, the motion is carried. Would anyone like to speak to the resolution? Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. So I foreshadowed this motion and put it forward as a compromise because I know there are different opinions about the program that's out there, how it was formulated. And when Macedon Rangers tried to engage with the State Government about how it was formulating this program, we didn't really get much, well, we got no response basically. So I'm hoping that this time around, with it having been around for a while, that they'll have built more evidence, that there'll be that ability to have those conversations better with the community. We can assist the State Government to have those conversations with the community so we can really get an evidence base. Is this the right thing to do in our area? Should we be excluded or shouldn't we? At the moment, we don't probably have that evidence of the impact on the kangaroo populations. what it's done in terms of industry and enterprise, etc. So there's many arms to this program, and I think it's important that we do make sure that we are prepared and looking at it. So hopefully we'll mark it down in our calendar for noting for when it comes up in the future so that we can be more prepared. I think it sort of caught us a little bit by surprise last time in that there were some trials and it sort of gradually happened. So at this point in time, I think the government is unlikely, if we just wrote to them and said, look, we'd like to be excluded, they may not even write back to us, but if they did, it's unlikely that they're going to change anything without us providing any evidence base. So this is the opportunity we have, is to tell them we would like to get that evidence base for the next review. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Would anyone else like to speak? Councillor Guthrie.
Thank you, Mayor Kendall. Yes, I spoke to Councillor Anderson at the weekend about my issues with not knowing the information, and my version of point 2 was a little bit clumsier than hers, so thank you, Jennifer. But it's like any matter. How can you... Yes, and of course Rebecca for tidying it up. Yes, a little bit clumsy, wasn't it, to start with? But it's like anything. How do you make a decision when you don't have the information? I don't care what the subject is, whether it's financial or anything. If you haven't got the information, you can't make an informed decision. And that's where I'm at with this. I want the evidence-based information to make an informed decision rather than a guesstimate, which is all we're doing if we don't have that information. So I totally support this recommendation. And thank you to the staff and Jennifer for her work.
Councillor Scanlon.
Thank you, Mayor. I also support this this alternative motion. The state government estimates there's like 495,000 kangaroos in the Loddon Mallee zone, and they just go, well, we're going to cull 10%. So that 10% equates to 49,500 in this region. So the question then is about the methodology, which is what Councillor Anderson was referring to. So when you look at, so I managed farming land, about 600 acres on 4 properties, and I reckon over that 4 properties there's between 350 and 450 kangaroos, but they range over about 5 or 6 different properties. So how do you estimate how many kangaroos you've got? So without actually having local knowledge and information being fed into the system, how can you tell how many kangaroos there are and what the effects are? So that's why I'm supporting this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scanlon. Would anyone else like to speak? We'll keep moving. We're going to go to the next item in this section, which is PE.3 Response to Notice of Motion 13/25 to 26 Housing Targets for Macedon Ranges Shire Council. Councillors, I'll be looking for a motion, and there's an officer recommendation on page 77. Just give a moment to scroll. Councillor Anderson.
I don't know, there's some slow buzzers here tonight, so I'm happy to move the officer recommendation. The Council notes no response from the Minister for Planning has been received to date in relation to the notice of motion 13/2025-26.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Guthrie.
Happy to second that, Mayor Kendall.
Is there any opposition? Seeing no opposition, the motion is carried. Would anyone like to speak to the resolution? Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. We write to the Minister frequently, and it would be really good if we could get an acknowledgement that we've written and that an answer might be coming. We are working really hard on behalf of our community to do the best thing we can for our community, and it would be really good if we could have these collaborative conversations with the state government and our community and us as that broker between. We'll get a much better outcome. We've got this thing called the HCAPs, and we've only just sort of had part access to some of the numbers and how the figures have worked out. So how can we plan and know what we need to do in the future to protect our distinctive area and landscape? Yes, I'll say it again, and we have a statement of planning policy, and we were the first to get it, and we are really, really special. How can we plan for what our community wants to enforce our community vision that our community worked so hard on when we don't have this information. We don't know where these numbers are coming from, what's been included, what hasn't. So watch this space. We will keep working. We will keep trying to get this data on behalf of our communities so we know how to fight on your behalf so we can create the Macedon ranges that you know and love and you want to continue to be part of. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak? Councillor Guthrie.
I almost feel like repeating what I said on the last item. How can you make a decision when you don't have the information? They've told us the total number of houses they expect us to have, an additional 13,200, but we don't know where that starts from. We don't know the baseline. We don't know what's included in it. We don't know where these alleged caravan parks, residential villages or whatever you want to call them, fit in. Are they counted? We don't know. And so I don't believe we can make informed decisions unless the Minister responds to that request that Councillor Borthwick put together, and then we might be in a position to make some decisions. But at the moment, I've got no idea what the 13,200 houses includes, when it starts from, and when are we going to have to achieve it. So, yeah, we need that information, then we might be in a position to move forward.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Councillor Borthwick.
Thanks, Mayor Kendall. Just to reiterate, I support the motion and I don't thank anyone because we didn't get an answer. So I think it highlights a broader issue though for council. Recently, councillors have received information, and I think both Robin and Jennifer Anderson touched on this with regards to the housing capacity assessment platform. And as this is new coming to us, we're still trying to understand how that data interfaces with community growth expectations and the like. But to echo Councillor Guthrie, if we're expected to plan for growth, we should at least be given the information that we need to plan well. Our good planning relies on good information, and our communities and us here in this room deserve confidence that housing targets, housing capacity assessments and future growth planning are supported by accurate, transparent and robust data. I find it disappointing that Council's questions remain unanswered as we continue to navigate housing pressures, growth expectation, planning proposals across the entire Shire. It's important that both councillors and communities have confidence and in the data informing those decisions and conversations. I think there is far more work to be done for all levels of government in this space, and I look forward to continuing that conversation in the future. And I do hope that by some miracle we get some answers in the coming weeks.
Thank you, Councillor Borthwick. Would anyone else like to speak? Okay, we'll keep moving. We're going to go to the next and final item in this section, which is PE.5 Events and Festivals Grant Program 26 to 27, and I'm looking for a motion, and there is an officer recommendation on page 84. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. I've got a motion to put forward that has been circulated to councillors earlier. I'll read the final version. That Council 1 notes the funding recommendations listed in Attachment 1 for the Events and Festivals Grant Program, and 2 notes the in-kind recommendations listed in Attachment 2 for the Events and Festivals Grants Program. 3, for the purposes of the Events and Festival Grants Program Guidelines 26-27 and the, in inverted commas, unless otherwise approved by Council, close inverted commas, provision in the Community Grants Policy, approves an alternative methodology for the 2026-27 Events and Festivals Grants Program, whereby 1, the assessment panel recommendations are provided to the Executive Leadership Team for review, and 2, the Chief Executive Officer approves the final funding and in-kind recommendations. Point 4, requests the Chief Executive Officer to facilitate a review of the Community Grants Policy to establish an overarching governance and approval framework for Council's grant programs and associated guidelines with particular regard to contemporary best practice, and present the revised policy to Council for adoption prior to the 2027-28 grant allocations.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Is there a seconder? Councillor Scanlon.
I'm happy to second that motion. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Is there any opposition? Seeing no opposition, the motion is carried. Would anyone like to speak to the resolution? Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. Firstly, I would like to say thank you to everyone who put in an application for the events and festival grants. We know that it's a lot of hard work to put together. We know there are some events and festivals that are on there triphasic, and so congratulations for what they've done so far, and they will have acquitted their previous Smarty grants in order to be eligible to continue to get the funding. The reason why this motion is slightly different to the officer recommendation is we've been reflecting on previous audit and VAGO reports that basically say that councillors need to have arm's length distance from these decisions, and we shouldn't be part of the decision making. We're the final, yes, let's tell the world that we've got these and isn't it great, and we can congratulate our recipients. But there's a governance process involved, and we've noted that there's a few little glitches in the policies and the guidelines that we have at the moment that are perhaps not contemporary and best practice. So tonight is using what we've got in our current policy to adjust the mechanism by which the process will occur, and we will do a thorough review. So I'd really like to say thank you to all my fellow councillors who've worked together to work through the process, and the staff that have come together to get us an outcome that means that we're getting closer to having best practice with awarding these events and festivals grants. But mostly congratulations to all of those recipients that will be determined by the CEO upon review of the recommendation of the panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? No, thank you. We'll keep moving. We're going to go on to the next section, which is Chief Executive Officer reports. And the only item in this section is CX1, report from the 2026 National General Assembly of Local Government held in Canberra in June 2026. There's an officer recommendation on page 91 of the agenda, and I'll be looking for a motion. Some items of the people in the gallery are leaving. Thank you very much. Bye, Youth Councillor. Thank you for coming in. Thanks, Oliver. So, yeah. Councillor Anderson, oh, sorry, I need to see. Oh, Councillor Anderson.
I was just going to move the motion. Which
yeah,
is
no, I was just checking because Councillor Scanlon's too.
But I'm not sure whether Councillor Scanlon was there before.
It was you, Councillor Anderson. Okay. Thank you. Councillor Scanlon. Second the motion.
Fasting Anderson over there.
I will move the motion as printed in the notice paper. I don't think I need to read it.
No, that's
again.
Fine.
Thank you.
Councillor Scanlon, I'm happy to second.
Second the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any opposition? Seeing no opposition, the motion is carried. Would anyone like to speak to the resolution?
Very briefly.
Councillor Anderson.
Yes. I think the National General Assembly is something I would encourage councillors to go to at least once during their term of council. It is an opportunity to meet with councillors across the country and see who does things differently. The voting on the motions can be quite challenging because there is such a diversity of the councils out there, but it is a really valid learning opportunity. It is so busy. I'm sure that Councillor Pearce, who attended on her own behalf, and Councillor Kendall as the Mayor, can attest that you start your meetings, etc., at like 6:30 in the morning, and you're probably finishing around sort of 9, 10 o'clock at night. It's totally on the go. The brain is constantly buzzing. You're taking down notes and thinking about what can I bring back to my community that I've learnt from these conferences. So I just want to encourage councillors that at least once in your term it is worth considering going to and experiencing the National General Assembly. And I say that as a councillor. I am now, I don't think I'm a conflict of interest. I am on the board of the Australian Local Government Association that puts it on, but I still think it is a wonderful opportunity to go and learn just so much more than our little patch. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak? No, okay. Thank you. Thank you. We're going to keep moving. We're going to go to section 13, corporate reports. And the first item in this section is COR.1 Audit and Risk Committee Biannual Report, June 26. And there is an officer recommendation on page 95 of the agenda, and I'll be looking for a motion. Let's scroll down. Councillor Scanlon. You all turned your buzzers on and off, so I'm sorry.
Thank you,
Councillor
Matt.
Scanlon.
I'd like to move the officer recommendation on page 95 that Council notes the Audit and Risk Committee Biannual Report, June 2026, and thanks the committee for the report.
Thank you, Councillor Scanlon. Councillor Joseph.
I'm happy to second that motion.
Thank you. Is there any opposition? Seeing no opposition, the motion is carried. Would anyone like to speak to the resolution? Councillor Borthwick.
I'll just briefly speak. Thank you, Mayor Kendall. As one of the councillor representatives of the Audit and Risk Committee over the past 10 months, I'd like to acknowledge that a significant amount of work sits behind the report. Much of what the committee deals with isn't particularly visible for the community, but it's fundamental to good governance. Whether it's cybersecurity, fraud prevention, risk management, internal controls or compliance, the committee's role is to provide independent oversight and ask difficult questions before issues become bigger problems. What I've appreciated through my involvement is the strong focus on continuous improvement. The committee doesn't just receive reports, it actively monitors progress, follows up actions and ensures identified risks are being addressed. Communities often see the projects we deliver, but reports like this remind us of the systems, controls and safeguards working behind the scenes to support that delivery. And ultimately, strong governance builds confidence in community. And it's really fantastic opportunity to be able to see the work and work alongside some amazing people in that group. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Borthwick. Would anyone else like to speak? No? Okay, we're going to keep moving to the second item in this section, which is COR.2 S6, Instrument of Delegation from Council to members of Council staff. There is an officer recommendation on page 110 of the agenda. We're looking for a motion. Councillor Joseph.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'd like to put the recommendation on page 110 of the agenda. I'll read it out. Recommendation: in the exercise of the powers conferred by the legislation referred to in the attached S6 Instrument of Delegation, Macedon Shire Council resolves that it be delegated to the members of council staff holding, acting or performing the duties of the offices or positions referred to in the attached S6 Instrument of Delegation to members of council staff the powers, duties and functions set out in that instrument, subject to condition and limitations specified in that instrument. The instrument comes into force immediately upon the resolution being made and is to be signed by the Council Chief Executive Officer. On the coming into force of the instrument, all previous S6 instruments of delegation to members of council staff are revoked, and the duties and functions set out in the instrument must be performed, and the powers set out in the instrument must be executed in accordance with any guidelines or policies of council that may from time to time be adopted.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Would anyone second the motion? Councillor Scanlon.
I'm happy to second that motion. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. Is there any opposition? Councillor Biannual. Seeing opposition, we will move to debate. And Councillor Joseph, you have 5 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. This motion derives from a motion passed at the last council meeting where we requested that the current delegations or the current referral process under the Planning and Environment Act and under the Road Management Act were actually formalised in the delegation, the S6 delegation. So the intention was just to place what we're already doing into the instrument, into the Planning and Environment Act and into the Road Management Act. Under the under the Planning and Environment Act, this was just to note and to put into the delegation the fact that once there were 5 objections to a planning application, that would come to council, and also that councillors could call in an application on the decision of 3 or more councillors. That is what we were doing, and the aim was just to put it into the delegation so it was clear what we were doing. Same with the Road Management Act. The Road Management Act, as councillors, we, under our road management, public roads policy, we made decisions in regard to additions and removal of roads from public roads register. So again, all we were doing was putting into the delegations what we were actually doing. So it was clear, community knew what we were doing and that the process was specified. So the motion we passed at the last council meeting was that that was to happen. The staff have gone away and diligently altered the delegations, added those comments into it to ensure that they actually comply with what we're already doing. So I wouldn't have thought it was particularly controversial given the decision we made at the last meeting. And yeah, I recommend it to the councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Joseph. Councillor Scanlon, would you like to reserve or speak now?
I can speak now.
Yeah, sure, go for it.
I don't really want to speak too much about the delegation, but just to thank the staff for all the time and energy they've put into prosecuting all these changes that have been going on for quite a few months. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Would anyone like to speak in opposition to the motion? Councillor Biannual.
Thank you, Mayor. And whilst I'm pleased to see that the duties under sections 17.3 and 17.4 of the Road Management Act 2004 are not being delegated, that's great. I'm really still unclear on the benefit, really, and I guess any unintended consequences of not delegating those two particular sections, and the intent behind not delegating those powers. So I do understand a lot of work has gone into this, but unfortunately I can't really support the motion for the reasons I mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone like to speak for the motion? Would anyone like to speak for or against the motion? I'll throw it open. If not, we'll go back to Councillor Joseph for right of reply. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Biannual, for your comments. I'm not entirely sure of your point. I think it was to do with the Road Management Act, Section 17.3 and 17.4. That was just to reflect the public roads policy that we already have in terms of the power to add or remove a road from the public roads register. And that's specified in our public roads register policy, and all this is doing is just putting it into the delegation to make it clear. So there's not much controversial in this. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you to staff again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Joseph. Okay. I'll now call the item to a vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those against? Thank you. The motion is carried. Division?
Yes, please.
Yes, sure. All those for the motion, please raise your hand. We have Councillor Scanlon, Councillor Joseph, Councillor Pearce, Councillor Guthrie, Councillor Kendall, Councillor Borthwick, Councillor Young, Councillor Anderson. All those opposed? Councillor Biannual. Thank you. The motion is carried. Thank you. We'll go to the next item in this section, and that is COM2 2026 Community Satisfaction Survey result. Sorry. Oh, yes, sorry, we'll go back. Oh, yeah, COR.3, sorry. The last item in this section is COR.3 Contracts to be awarded as of July 2026, and there is an officer recommendation on page 113. Councillor Guthrie.
Thank you, Mayor Kendall. The recommendation is that Council notes the following contracts will be awarded by Council officers under the Delegated Authority. 1, C26-141 Underground Drainage Pipe Relining Works.
Councillor Joseph.
Happy to second that.
Thank you. Is there any opposition? Seeing no opposition, the motion is carried. Would anyone like to speak? The resolution? No. We'll keep moving. We're now going to move on to section 14 of the agenda, community reports. And the first item in this section is COM1 Community Funding Scheme 2026-27 funding recommendations. And I'll be looking for a motion. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor Kendall. I have a motion that has been circulated to councillors prior to the meeting, and that motion is that Council 1 notes the 2026-27 Community Funding Scheme allocations as described in this report and attachment. 2, for the purpose of the, in inverted commas, unless otherwise approved by Council, close inverted commas, provision in the Community Grants Policy approves an alternative methodology for the 2026-27 Community Funding Scheme allocations, whereby 1, the assessment panel recommendations are provided to the Executive Leadership Team for review, and 2, the Chief Executive Officer approves the final grant allocations. 3, requests the Chief Executive Officer to facilitate a review of the Community Grants Policy to establish an overarching governance and approval framework for Council's grant programs and associated guidelines, with particular regard to contemporary best practice, and present the revised policy to Council for adoption prior to the 2027-28 grant allocations. And point 4, notes the 2027-28 Community Grants Program will be delivered in 27-28, with a later launch date to allow Council to consider findings from the Strategic Grants Review regarding the proposed model for future delivery of the program.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Is there a seconder? Councillor Joseph.
I'm happy to second that motion.
Thank you. Is there any opposition? Seeing opposition, we'll move to debate. And Councillor Anderson, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. So this is somewhat similar to a motion that we put forward before for the festivals and grants, in that we want to improve our governance around our programs and remove councillors from the decision making, that there is a process whereby we're comfortable that our staff are equipped to make these decisions. There's a framework. Councillors have worked through with staff in the community what's the best way to do that, but we are simply bringing them here to notice. This is best practice. This is what the VAGO report says. So I'm happy to say that, you know, whoever ends up being the recipient of these grants, which will, if the motion is passed, be determined finally by the CEO. Thank you to everybody who has put in a submission, but particularly to those that will be successful. But we do need to improve the processes. And so that's what this motion is about, is to try and make a step towards improving the processes. The policy does allow us to do that, but it is better if we can actually improve the policy and the subsequent guidelines that go with it to make it clearer to everybody in the community how it works, who they need to contact, what the process is, and how those decisions are made. So that is why this strays a little bit from the recommendation by the officer. There will still be grants awarded, but that will be determined by the CEO upon the recommendations of the panel and not determined by us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Joseph, would you like to speak or reserve?
I'll just echo what Councillor Anderson has said and support her in that motion. Yes, the VAGO review basically said that councillors should not be involved in the awarding of grants, and so this is entirely appropriate and entirely in line with the VAGO recommendations. So I commend her on the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Joseph. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? I might say some words, please, governance. I'm not going to go into too much details, but I did have just some assessment and risk concerns with the motion. I also understand some of these issues are kind of more, I think, private to discuss, and I understand, Victorian Auditor General Office VAGO constraints, and I really appreciate the alternative put forward, but I'll just be voting no to this motion at this point in time, just because of some risk concerns. So, thank you. Would anyone else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Borthwick.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Mayor Kendall. I think one of the challenges local government is facing is balancing good community outcomes with good governance. And I think we talk a lot about VAGO and we use a lot of acronyms and language in the chamber. And I should know better than that, because if you're an observer on the outside and a community member watching this, it's like, what are you talking about? So VAGO is the Victorian Auditor General's Office. And they reviewed the grants program across the local government and found that some councils needed stronger processes to ensure public funding was allocated fairly, transparently, and with appropriate oversight. At Macedon Ranges here, councillors, none of us in the chamber here, assess or SCOR grant applications. Those assessments are undertaken by officers against published criteria with controls around conflicts of interest and decision making. Councillors remain deliberately at arm's length from these assessments to protect the integrity of the program and ensure funding decisions are made fairly. What councillors are responsible for is ensuring that the governance framework itself is robust. In other words, our role is not to decide whether an application scores higher than another or whether to assess, but to ensure that the process is transparent, accountable and worthy of community trust. And with that said, and further to Councillor Anderson's commentary earlier tonight, we've noticed that there are some things that we can tighten up within the organisation around that, and hence the fact that there is the inclusion of a review to come back as part of this motion. So from that perspective, I support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Borthwick. Would anyone like to speak for or against the motion? If not, we'll go back to Councillor Anderson for right and reply. Thank you.
Thank you. So if you read the officer's report, it already actually states that there is a need for review, and the plan is to do a review, because our staff have actually looked at what we have and realised that we can actually improve on our processes. And so we've had that discussion with our staff, and I feel now is the time to sort of slowly start that process and look at, if councillors are to be at truly arm's length, we shouldn't be saying endorse something, because we're not endorsing it. We haven't made the decision. Somebody else is making that decision, and that's the way it should be, and that's the way the Auditor General has stated it should be. So this is an improvement, and it doesn't take away from any of the applications or the staff's assessment. We are leaving the staff to make that assessment, and in future we will hopefully have a more robust process, that councils are comfortable, that the tools that they have given the staff to make those assessments, that the resources are there that they need to make those assessments, because it's a wide and varied group that apply for these programs. And we know when we give money to the community, it is often much better value than something we could do ourselves. So it's really important that we provide the staff with that robustness. The community then knows that there's those processes in place to ensure that we are getting the best value for everybody. So the changing of the motion from the officer recommendation is purely about governance. It's not taking away from any of the applications. It's not taking away from the staff's assessment. It is saying that it is not our role to make the assessment here tonight. It is the role of staff, and I look forward to the review should this motion get up, and look forward to finding out what the final decision is with those applications. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. I'll now call the item to a vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those against? Thank you. The motion is carried. We'll keep moving to the second item in this. Okay. See you. Bye. See ya. We'll now keep moving to COM.2 2026 Community Satisfaction Survey results, and we'll be having an introduction from our Director Community. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. This report presents the results of the 2026 Community Satisfaction Survey, together with the final progress report on the 2025 Community Satisfaction Survey Action Plan. The survey provides one of Council's most important independent measures of community perception. While it's not a measure of operational performance itself, it gives us valuable insight into how the community experiences our services, decisions and overall direction. Overall, Council's performance index increased from 49 to 51. It's a slight change and reflects a first upward movement since 2021, suggesting a positive direction of travel. Council is performing on par and in fact 1 point ahead above the large rural council average. The report also highlights some clear strengths. Waste management, customer service and recreational facilities continue to receive strong community endorsement, while planning and building permits and sealed local roads recorded meaningful improvements compared with last year. At the same time, the survey reinforces that roads remain the community's highest priority and that perceptions around decision making and community consultation continue to have the greatest influence on overall satisfaction with council. The report also marks a shift in how council uses the survey results. Rather than maintaining a standalone annual action plan, it proposes embedding the findings into council's existing strategic planning, business planning, budgeting, advocacy and community engagement processes. This approach ensures community feedback informs council's core planning and decision making on an ongoing basis, rather than being managed through a separate annual reporting process. The recommendation before Council is to note the Community Satisfaction Survey results from 26 and the final progress report from the survey in 2025, and to recognise these as the evidence base for informing Council's ongoing strategic planning, advocacy, service improvement and future decision making.
Thank you, Director Community. And there's an officer recommendation on page 130 and 131 of the agenda, and I'll be looking for a motion. Councillor Biannual.
Happy to move the motion on page 130 and 131.
Thank you, Councillor Biannual. Councillor Pearce.
Yeah, I'll second. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any opposition? Seeing no opposition, the motion is carried. Would anyone like to speak to the resolution? Councillor Biannual.
Very briefly, Mayor, thank you. Yeah, it's quite pleasing to see that I guess the tables have turned, and the work that we as a new council group have done since the beginning of our term. So yeah, just really pleased to see that and onwards and upwards, hopefully. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Biannual. Councillor Anderson.
Yes, briefly. I think we all know this is just at one point in time. It is one way of measuring community satisfaction and what we're doing, and we all do take on board every single time you email us as councillors or you email the staff and you talk to us in the streets about what are the issues that are concerning you and what are the problems that are out there. But it is really pleasing to see that we are maturing, and it's not sort of thought of as a set and forget, oh yeah, we got those results, we didn't do so well, or we did a bit better, and we just kind of leave them there and don't connect them to anything else that we're doing. So this whole idea of when we're looking at our budget, when we're formulating our council plan action items, we have a look at areas that we need to maintain that higher level, where are we dropping low, but we'll also include any feedback we've had from previous budget submissions and all our community consultations. But I think incorporating it all together is a really mature approach, and I'm really pleased that we're really starting to develop that integrated approach where every piece of information we get, we're putting it together to create that council plan and budget, which is kind of driving everything else we do and is assisting us to get those actions done in all those policies that you as community members provided submissions for, and we as councillors and our staff worked so hard to ensure that we have a really great place to live that is equitable for everybody, takes care of the environment, has a thriving economy, all those things you asked for. This information does help us to do that. So I think it's as Councillor Biannual said, it's good that we are going in the right direction. We know there's improvement, but integrating it is the way to go. And thank you to the staff for having that approach.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Would anyone else like to speak? I might say some words, please, Governance. Thank you. Well, first up, I think a massive thank you to Community Engagement Lead and Manager Engagement and Advocacy, because I think this report this year is just an astronomical improvement in our approach to community satisfaction, and I just want to thank them for all of their work. And just to highlight for people who won't take the time or don't have the time to go through just some of the things that came out of the community satisfaction. And overall council performance improved from 49 to 51, which is the first upward movement since 21. So I think we're back in line now with large rural council average, and I think it's really amazing to see, because even small movements are a really good step in the right direction. Strongest gains, we had gains in sealed local roads, town planning policy, planning and building permits, recreational facilities, and waste management's always a top performer, and then also customer service. And some of the challenges that we know, just unsealed roads and some of the community perceptions of decision making and consultation. But in the report, you can see that there are ways that we intend to address that and have people feel more involved in the decision making process. And I really like the points that they say, you said, we heard, and to investigate a community-led Little Wins project targeting road improvement projects and things like that. So I think that should start to highlight some of the positive work that's been done. And just to note, residents aged 35 to 49 are the least satisfied group, and I think that just shows a little bit, as being in that group myself, just the work that we need to do to engage really busy families, really busy people that don't understand sometimes how local government works, how to have their voice heard, how to actually make change in the process. So I think that's something that we can really look at, and also really productive change in terms of incorporating the survey findings into council plan budget advocacy perspectives, meaning they're not one-dimensional static feedbacks. These are going to be a part of that planning and reporting. So I think overall it's actually a positive report, and that community satisfaction is improving. We've had some meaningful gains, and still, there's a lot of work that we can do, but I want to thank the staff once again for an amazing report. Thank you. Okay, would anyone else like to say a few words? No, we'll keep moving. We're going to go to the next section, section 15 of the agenda, Assets and Operations Reports. And the first item in this section is AO1, Proposed Special Charge Scheme, Noonan Grove, Wood End Scheme Outcome. And we'll be having an introduction from our Director of Assets and Operations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Kendall. This report presents the outcome of the Special Charge Scheme process for Noonan Grove, Wood End. The statutory consultation process resulted in objections exceeding the threshold set out in Council's Special Charge Scheme policy and the Local Government Act. As a result, the report recommends that Council discontinue the proposed Special Charge Scheme and continue to maintain Noonan Grove in accordance with the Road Management Plan, together with the installation of additional signage to help minimise dust. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Director, Assets and Operations. And there's a motion, officer recommendation on page 163, and I'll be looking for a motion. Councillor Anderson.
Much as it saddens me, I am going to put forward the officer recommendation that Council 1 discontinues the special charge scheme for Noonan Grove Wood End. 2, notifies affected residents of the resolution of Council. 3, implement signage to influence road user behaviour to minimise dust on Noonan Grove Wood End. And 4, continues to maintain Noonan Grove Wood End in accordance with Council's road management plan.
Thank you. And sorry, I didn't see governance. Who do you see?
I don't know. I believe it's Councillor Guthrie.
Councillor Guthrie. Would you like to second the motion?
Thank you, that's what I was trying to do.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Guthrie. Is there any opposition? Seeing no opposition, the motion is carried. Would anyone like to speak? Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. For those councillors that aren't aware, this has been an issue that has gone through my entire 4 terms of council. And I would like to say a really big appreciation to the patience of the residents of Noonan Grove, and thank you to the current staff that we have that have been working with the residents on trying to find a solution. Unfortunately, it has taken a long time. We have moved on with a new special charge scheme, but we did pass a motion that they could use the old scheme given the length of time. But costs have escalated, and thus the members of the community that live on that road now have felt that the financial burden of contributing has been too much for them, and so the survey has come back without enough support, and the Local Government Act says we must abandon a special charge scheme if, according to our policy, we don't have the support that we need. Having said that, at least we're going to try and do some signage to educate people that use that road, to reduce their speeds with the dust, and in fact reduce speeds probably in the winter. We do know that cars do get bogged there. It is unfortunate that we couldn't find a safe solution with a footpath, even as part of our footpath policy, because our engineers tell us that if you tried to engineer a footpath without doing the road, you would run into troubles with water and poolage, and then you'd have an asset that just wouldn't work for you. So I'm optimistic that we may be able to find a solution down the track that might work for this location, that will reduce the issue of the amount of traffic it's now getting with new development, with the dust and the bogging in winter. But at the moment, unfortunately, the costs are just too high and the scheme has not reached the maximum number of people. So really just a huge thank you to everyone involved. Thank you to everybody's patience involved in this program. Thank you to my fellow councillors who I know have taken a while to get up to speed with this item, given that it has been going on for such a long time. Thank you to Councillor Pearce, who's been on the journey with me for Woodend, and the residents that have been contacting us and advocating for all that amount of time. So unfortunately, it's not the outcome that those that put forward the special charge scheme have been seeking, but hopefully you do understand where we've got to at this point in time, and that hopefully the signage that we're going to put up will make a little bit of a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Would anyone else like to speak? Councillor Guthrie.
Thank you, Mayor Kendall. I agree with Councillor Anderson. I'm very disappointed to see this. And I'm not trying to add to you on time, Councillor Anderson, but actually precedes you being on council. It was when I was on council that we had the permit come in for the subdivision on the flood land at the end of Noonan Grove, which we gave a permit to, but Noonan Road was to be sealed. And then it went to VCAT, and of course, anything goes. The developer said, no, we don't want to do that. And so our condition got removed. And I think that was about 2013 from the top of my head. So it's gone on since then, and we've had a couple of attempts at a special charge scheme. And we've had some very disappointed neighbours in there, some quite valuable properties that are constantly getting filled with dust, which I know is pretty frustrating. So I'm disappointed that we couldn't get an amicable result in this case, but that's the way it goes. Sometimes the costs outweighed what people could afford.
Thank you, Councillor Guthrie. Would anyone else like to speak? I might say some words, thanks, governance. Just echoing a little bit of what Councillor Anderson and Guthrie have said is that, yes, what can I say? There are really no words really to summarise this whole process and the history of this, and that's not the purpose of this report. And Councillor Pearce and I met with residents in early May on site, and that was a great opportunity to listen and run through the exact timeline and get up to speed as a new West Ward councillor as well, and all of the interaction to date. So hopefully going forward there will be a solution and other solutions, because we do hear from a lot of people about dust on roads. But just to share that there have been newly installed dust signs that have gone up, so residents are slowly seeing small tweaks that are making a difference there. So that's fantastic to see. And also just to say thank you to the CEO, Director A&O and staff who have engaged with the residents on site. I think that's also been a big improvement in how we're communicating, collaborating with residents, and just building more transparency and agility over some of the council decisions. So thanks again to everyone for their work on this, and I'm sure it's not over, so we'll see. Thank you. Would anyone else like to say some words? No, we will keep going to the next item in this section, which is A02, Response to Petition in relation to a pedestrian crossing on Rumsey Road, Woodend. And we'll be having another introduction from Director Assets and Operations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Kendall. This report responds to the petition requesting a formal pedestrian crossing on Romsey Road, Woodend. Following community concerns and 2 incidents involving children earlier this year, councillors work closely with the Department of Transport and Planning to improve pedestrian safety at this location. The report recommends noting the petition, delivering a package of immediate safety improvements funded by the Victorian Government, and continuing to advocate for a permanent pedestrian crossing and a comprehensive speed review.
Thank you, Director A&O. Councillors, I'll be looking for a motion. There is an officer recommendation on page 167. Councillor Pearce.
Thank you. I'd like to move the motion on page 167 that Council 1 notes the petition, 2 notes the short-term safety improvement works to be delivered by Council in conjunction with Department of Transport and Planning, DTP, which includes relocating the crossing point 80 metres east and extending pedestrian fencing. 3, continues to advocate to the Department of Transport and Planning, DTP, for a permanent formal safety crossing and comprehensive speed review at this location.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Scanlon.
I'm happy to second that motion. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Scanlon. Is there any opposition? Seeing no opposition, the motion is carried. Would anyone like to speak to the resolution? Councillor Pearce.
Yes, thank you. And thank you to the Director for the summary and introduction. We acknowledge the safety concerns over some years. We acknowledge the events and accidents at the intersection that's caused anxious moments, and we acknowledge that this is for North Wood End, connecting to not only Wood End Primary Schools and St Ambrose Primary School, but also to the centre of town and to many of the sporting facilities and those central areas around. So this is very important, just as it was from the south of Wood End coming across. This is very important for the north. So I really appreciate this, the efforts from council officers and everyone to work with the Department of Transport and Planning. We know this intersection is an arterial road. We know that it's the Department of Transport's allocated roads, but we will have got implemented some short-term matters, but the main thing is that we're going to continue the conversations long-term. That's the really important point I'd like to say, that we'll continue to work together. So thank you to the community that got on board with organising the petition. We've spoken about petitions are a great way, raising this attention and drawing it into a council meeting and getting it assessed and reported back to council with action. So thanks to the community that's raised it as well.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce. Would anyone else like to speak? I might say some words. Thank you, Governance. Echoing what Councillor Pearce was saying there, because a big thank you to Catherine Tollerud for her advocacy on this. Catherine reached out in February earlier to Westwood, and I think Councillor Pearce and myself helped to create, understand council petition process and how to create compliant petitions, which itself is a feat to navigate that petition process. So I really want to thank Catherine for submitting this, and she actually started the advocacy months before the two children were unfortunately hit by cars in mid-April. So she rightly predicted that it was an unsafe intersection, and Council did send a letter to DTP on 29th of April calling for urgent safety improvements. So that's not quite listed in the report, but I think it really shows Council's advocacy on this, and in conjunction with the community, with DTP, have really been able to get some action in a very short period of time. And I think it's really important to set community expectations up well, and this report highlights that the funding it's for a crossing itself, it's to move the crossing points, some fencing, but really that Council and DTP will continue to work collaboratively to further investigate a proper longer term infrastructure solution. So thanks also to Wood End Primary School and ABC Radio and the Midland Express, which allowed us to raise this issue further and give it a platform. And thanks to council staff for responding to the petition, working closely with DTP, and thanks to Catherine once again. Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? No. Thank you. We'll go to section 16 of the agenda. And there are no items in this section on notices, motion and rescission. So urgent business, section 17, any urgent business?
There is no urgent business, thank you.
Thank you. And then the final section, confidential reports. There are no confidential reports to discuss at this or consider at this meeting. So Therefore, I'd like to thank everyone for attending in the gallery and watching online tonight, and close this meeting at 8:48 p.m. Thank you.